You're listening to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeReyes, right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast. It is, of course, June 24th, 2024. We got a lot of things to talk about on this week's edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Of course, we got to talk about this banner week that has transpired in World Wrestling Entertainment this past week. Of course, a lot of things happened in WWE across Raw, SmackDown, and NXT with, of course, the CM Punk and Drew McIntyre feud, the debut of the Wyatt Sicks, as well as the debut of JACOB FATU. Of course, where does this all lead when it comes to the new Bloodline storyline? Of course, the new Bloodline that Solo Sikoa is forming behind the back of the wise man, Paul Heyman. We're also going to be talking about NXT and TNA. How is their partnership transpiring so far as say his name and he appears, he believes, or I should say we believe, in Joe Hendry, showed up this past Tuesday night on NXT representing TNA. We're going to talk about that as well. Jeff Hardy showed up at the TNA Against All Odds show. We're going to talk about the status of Jeff Hardy, as well as AEW. We're going to go through Forbidden Door. Of course, Forbidden Door is going to be taking place this weekend. We're going to talk about the Owen Hart Cup brackets, as well as that low Dynamite rating that had a lot of people talking on social media this past week. And I'm going to be talking about what's wrong with AEW, as well as Ricochet. Of course, Ricochet, currently from what we know, is planning on no longer signing with the WWE. So we're going to be talking about Ricochet's status with WWE and where he's possibly going to be ending up. Spoiler alert, in my opinion, I think he's going to be showing up in AEW. We're going to be talking about all this and much more right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast. It is June 24th, 2024. It's been a while, guys. I haven't been around for a while right here on the show. Of course, I definitely wasn't on YouTube a lot. Of course, I didn't cover WrestleMania, even though I did watch WrestleMania. WWE, realistically, these past few months has been on fire. Not only with, of course, the build-up, the amazing build-up that was WrestleMania 40 with The Rock and the Bloodline, all that stuff. Cody Rhodes is the new WWE champion, which, of course, Cody Rhodes right now is the current face of the company. The international shows that WWE into, of course, WWE Backlash in France. I mean, France was absolutely amazing. Probably one of the best crowds that WWE has ever had. And, of course, we had Clash at the Castle last weekend in Scotland, and really it gave France a run for its money, and we're going to be talking about Clash at the Castle as well. But before I get on with all this craziness right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Of course, we're going to waste no time. We're going to get started by discussing WWE Clash at the Castle 2024. Of course, it is the second edition of Clash at the Castle. The first time that WWE had a Clash at the Castle show was in Cardiff, Wales, 2 years ago, which had Drew McIntyre lose to Roman Reigns, and a lot of people in Wales were pissed off, and not as pissed off as the people were in Scotland. Of course, the people in Scotland saw Drew McIntyre lose the World Heavyweight title opportunity as CM Punk once again cost Drew McIntyre the World Heavyweight Championship. We're going to do a quick rundown of the Clash at the Castle card. Overall, I thought Clash at the Castle was a great show, and a large portion of that has to do with the crowd. The crowd at these international PLEs have been absolutely phenomenal. Of course, I talked about Backlash in France. This show was no different. Of course, WWE is going to be going to Canada for Money in the Bank. They got Bash in Berlin, in Germany in a couple of months. We got SummerSlam in Cleveland. WWE right now is on frickin' fire. But we're going to be doing a quick recap of Clash at the Castle. Of course, we had the undisputed WWE Championship I Quit match between, of course, the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes, and the phenomenal AJ Styles. The build for this match was great. Even though it was a 2 to 3 week build, I really enjoyed the build for this match. Of course, AJ Styles pulling a Mark Henry and basically fooling everybody thinking that he was going to retire, but in reality he did not retire. He wanted another shot at Cody Rhodes' WWE title. Of course, their first encounter was back in April, or I believe in May, at the Backlash show, which of course was a fantastic match. A lot of people definitely enjoyed that match, and probably one of the better WWE title matches, not only of that show, but throughout the entire year, in my opinion. It was a really good match, and of course that saw Cody Rhodes beat AJ Styles, and this was the I Quit match. Cody Rhodes ended up defeating AJ Styles. We had the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship match. It was a triple threat women's tag team match, as Alba Fire and Isla Dawn defeated Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, who were the champions, and Shayna Baszler and Zoe Stark. Of course, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, they're of course natives of Scotland, so it made total sense for them to get the win at Clash at the Castle. Not really the best match. Really, this match was kind of more sloppy, to really say the least. But, of course, it was expected that Alba Fire and Isla Dawn won the women's tag team titles. We had the IC title match as Sami Zayn defended his Intercontinental Championship. Of course, Sami Zayn defeated Gunther at WrestleMania to win the Intercontinental Championship, and Chad Gable has had multiple opportunities at the Intercontinental Championship, and every time he keeps on losing, and now he is going on this fantastic heel run. Of course, he is treating everybody in the Alpha Academy like absolute garbage, and it's one of the best things on Raw, and this led to Sami Zayn beating Chad Gable. No Creeds yet. Of course, everybody's expecting for Chad Gable to recruit the Creed brothers to be a part of this new Alpha Academy, considering now that Chad Gable is a heel, but we're going to have to wait a little longer. Of course, they did the angle with Otis this past Monday on Raw, but nonetheless, Sami Zayn is still the Intercontinental Champion. Of course, we had the WWE Women's Championship match as Bayley defended her title against Piper Niven. Overall, it was a pretty, I don't want to say one-sided match, but, I mean, let's be honest, it was obvious that Bayley was going to retain the title. There was no way in hell, even though Piper Niven was in her home country of Scotland, there was no way that Bayley, or I should say Piper Niven, was going to win the women's title. Bayley, of course, retained the belt. And, of course, in the main event, the match that everybody was excited to see, of course, that being Drew McIntyre, the current World Heavyweight Champion. Of course, he won that title by cashing in on Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania this past April. Defeated Drew McIntyre, of course, who was in his home country of Scotland. And there was a lot of negative reactions to this whole result. I'm one of those people that were not pissed off about this whole result, mainly because of the fact that the bigger picture and the bigger story is Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. And honestly, I'm one of those people that genuinely believed that Damian Priest really hasn't had a great run as the World Heavyweight Champion. I always felt like he was going to be a transitional champion, but he's doing pretty well for himself, and he's going to be wrestling Seth Rollins at the Money in the Bank show. Of course, Seth Rollins made his return last Monday night on Raw, but of course, how did Drew McIntyre lose? Drew McIntyre lost when the referee was down. He went for his finisher. He went for the pin. A referee came in, and the camera was basically pointing at the referee, but from behind. And from behind, as soon as he was counting, the referee stopped at the 2 count, and it ended up being CM Punk. CM Punk, once again, costs Drew McIntyre the World Heavyweight Championship, which of course led to Drew McIntyre going on an absolute tirade in Scotland, as well as the fans in Scotland. They were all pissed off that their hometown hero, Drew McIntyre, lost his shot at the World Heavyweight title, which led to what happened the next night on Monday Night Raw, in which Drew McIntyre was so aggravated and so pissed off that in kayfabe, he just quit WWE. He was like, you know what? This place sucks. I quit. I'm out. But of course, he was swerving us all, which led to what transpired this past Friday on SmackDown, one of the best SmackDowns, if not the best SmackDown show of the year. And of course, this show took place in Chicago. CM Punk actually appeared at the press conference for Clash of the Castle. Imagine that, CM Punk at a press conference. He appeared at the Clash of the Castle press conference, and he wanted to address his status and how, whether or not he was going to get cleared or not on that show. And we didn't really get an answer from CM Punk. We do not know if he's going to be cleared or not, but honestly, it would make sense if CM Punk is cleared, considering the angle that they did this past Friday on SmackDown. And of course, the angle that I was talking about was Drew McIntyre attacking CM Punk. Of course, what happened was CM Punk cut a promo. He cut a promo on Chicago, a babyface promo. Of course, it was the hometown hero, CM Punk. Of course, Paul Heyman comes in, a lot of Bloodline stuff. Of course, Paul Heyman has a lot of history with CM Punk, and he tells CM Punk, come with me, or let me go with you. Of course, the history that they both have with each other. And of course, Paul Heyman is a little bit freaked out and a little bit paranoid with all the shenanigans that Solo Sikoa has been doing, which I will be talking about the Bloodline 2.0 storyline, because honestly, from where this storyline is going, I'm going to be making a lot of predictions, and it's going to be some predictions that are going to be a little bit unusual when it comes to the Bloodline, but we're going to be talking about that later. From now on, let's talk about Drew McIntyre and CM Punk. Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, man. Of course, the angle that I'm talking about was, I should say, when CM Punk basically got attacked by Drew McIntyre, and you guys see it here. Drew McIntyre then picks up CM Punk, and he just walks. He walks across backstage, walks through Gorilla while he has CM Punk up on his shoulders, and just drops him like a rag doll on the stage. And of course, CM Punk was all bloodied up from his head, from his mouth. It was absolute chaos and brutality. Now, what are my thoughts on this angle? In my opinion, I think this angle with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre is one of the best angles. Not only the best angle, but the whole feud as a whole with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk has been arguably, in my opinion, the best feud of 2024. There's no denying whatsoever. This has been the best feud of 2024 simply because of the fact that it is the pure definition of a blood feud, a grudge feud. These two men absolutely despise one another. And we knew that CM Punk was eventually going to feud with Drew McIntyre ever since CM Punk first made his return to the company this past November at Survivor Series War Games. We all knew that was going to be the case. Drew McIntyre was pissed off, in kayfabe, of course, that CM Punk came back. Of course, he's one of those people that refer to CM Punk as a hypocrite. And honestly, this feud has been absolutely amazing simply because it keeps you guessing. WWE basically wants the viewer to be engaged when it comes to this feud, because you don't know what the hell is going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. Another thing, of course, this whole feud between Drew McIntyre and CM Punk is everything that Seth Rollins versus CM Punk should have been. Of course, we were originally supposed to get the Seth Rollins and CM Punk match at WrestleMania 40, but that didn't happen considering, of course, CM Punk injured his tricep, and as well, Seth Rollins suffered a minor injury in that match against Jinder Mahal, but thankfully he was all right. Of course, he ended up wrestling Drew McIntyre for the World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania, which led to Drew McIntyre beating Seth Rollins clean in the middle of the ring. CM Punk was on commentary, and you guys know the rest of the story. CM Punk basically was just fed up with all the shenanigans that Drew McIntyre was giving CM Punk, and what happened was it opened the door for Damian Priest to cash in his Money in the Bank and win the World Heavyweight title. So basically, CM Punk was injured, and they were still building towards this eventual match that, my prediction, I think we're going to be getting this match at SummerSlam. I do think we're going to be getting this match at SummerSlam. But one thing that is really fascinating to me about this whole feud is the way that they have been building to this match. I mean, WWE knew that CM Punk was injured, and he was still available, and he still showed up, and we were still getting segments with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk while CM Punk was injured. I absolutely love that. This feud has been absolutely amazing, and I cannot wait to see what WWE does in the future as it regards to this storyline, because this is only the beginning. We do not know when CM Punk is going to be cleared, but again, this has been one of the best feuds all year, in my opinion, if not the best feud, in my opinion. So those are my thoughts on CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Moving on with our next topic, of course, we are going to be talking about the Bloodline. The Bloodline has been running roughshod all over World Wrestling Entertainment, and you would think the Bloodline would be over, as Roman Reigns, of course, lost the undisputed title to Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania this past April, which that match was absolutely amazing. Just from an aura standpoint, and from just, I don't want to say a storytelling standpoint, but just a moment standpoint. I mean, the moments in that match were just absolutely insane. Of course, with John Cena showing up, The Undertaker showing up with The Rock and chokeslamming The Rock. It was just absolute chaos, that match. But, of course, that led to Cody Rhodes winning, for the first time in his career, the WWE Championship. But what happened after WrestleMania? What happened after WrestleMania was basically Solo Sikoa and the rest of the Bloodline basically whacked Jimmy Uso. And that, of course, led to the arrival of Tama Tonga. Tama Tonga has been a free agent, and of course, he has a long history in New Japan Pro Wrestling. And that later on led to the debut of Tanga Loa. Tanga Loa, of course, the Gorillas of Destiny. The Gorillas of Destiny, of course, one of the top tag teams at the time in New Japan Pro Wrestling, are now a part of WWE, and they are now a part of this new Bloodline stable that Solo Sikoa is forming. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is Solo Sikoa basically running the Bloodline, or is it somebody else? I guess you know who that is. But we had a debut take place this past Friday on SmackDown in Chicago, and that was none other than JACOB FATU. Yes, formerly of MLW, one of the top free agents in the world. JACOB FATU is now a part of WWE, and more importantly, he is now a part of this new Bloodline stable, and the way that they presented JACOB FATU was pure perfection. I loved the way and how they introduced JACOB FATU, with him just going absolutely ballistic on everybody, throwing super kicks left and right on everybody, on Randy Orton, and as well on Randy Orton. Not only that, on Kevin Owens. But the spot that is still stuck in my head that took place last Friday in Chicago was, of course, Cody Rhodes was on the announce table. JACOB FATU goes to the top rope, and what happens after that is JACOB FATU basically throws himself off the top rope and crashes through Cody Rhodes through the announce table. That was an absolute shock. I don't want to say a shock, but really one of the best handled debuts that I have seen in recent memory for any wrestler coming into the WWE. But JACOB FATU is now a part of this new Bloodline, and we need to ask ourselves, what is going on with this new Bloodline stable? Because I see a lot of people on the internet saying that this new Bloodline stable is lacking, blah blah blah. But these are the same people that just do not see the bigger picture. And what do I mean by the bigger picture? Remember that one question that I asked you in the beginning as I was talking about the Bloodline? Who is really running this new Bloodline stable? A lot of people are thinking it's Solo Sikoa at the end of the day. I do not think it's Solo Sikoa. It's really not Solo Sikoa if you think about it. And I say that because who was a part of the Bloodline in the build to WrestleMania? Of course, I'm talking about The Rock. Now, The Rock, I believe, is currently filming a film, and we do not know the status of The Rock's schedule, but eventually, The Rock will return, and we will be getting a match between The Rock and Cody Rhodes. A lot of people are predicting that match is going to be happening at next year's WrestleMania in Las Vegas. I do not see that match happening in Las Vegas at next year's WrestleMania. If anything, I still see them going forward with The Rock and Roman Reigns match. But we got Solo Sikoa basically kind of running the bloodline when Roman Reigns is not here. And he's basically, in a way, I don't want to say disobeying orders, but he's really doing a lot of things that Paul Heyman is not necessarily telling him to do. Solo is kind of just going on his own feet. So I ask myself, and you guys have to ask yourselves, who is really running the bloodline? Well, I predict that it's The Rock. Yes, The Rock is secretly running the bloodline. This is all leading to an original bloodline versus new bloodline feud in the future. That is my major prediction. Now, we have JACOB Fatu, we have the Guerrillas of Destiny, and we got Solo Sikoa. Solo Sikoa is very interesting because he came into the bloodline later on. He came into the bloodline later on throughout the bloodline's run in 2022 at, of course, Clash at the Castle in Cardiff, where he cost Drew McIntyre the undisputed title. So, Solo Sikoa is an original bloodline member. But why is he running this new group? This is my prediction when it comes to this whole bloodline storyline. And I don't want to fantasy book, but this is where I think this whole bloodline storyline is going by. And honestly, I am genuinely excited to see where they're going to go with this. I predict that we're going to be getting an eventual possible... It all depends on what WWE wants to do, because they did tease a Cody Rhodes and Solo Sikoa match at Clash of the Castle. They did tease that. Even though I don't think that's the right move for them to do, because I do predict that we're going to be getting a Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes match. On one hand, I do understand why they would want to go for the Solo Sikoa and Cody Rhodes match. But let's say they do Cody Rhodes versus Solo Sikoa at SummerSlam, which I don't think they will do. If Solo loses, that will lead, of course, for this new bloodline to basically whack Solo Sikoa off the group. And The Rock, by this point, will probably return. We do not know when The Rock will come back. But let's just say The Rock returns already, right? And they all whack Solo Sikoa off the group the same way that Solo Sikoa whacked Jimmy Uso off the group. That then leads for the return of Roman Reigns. And then that opens up, a whole new can of worms for this new bloodline, because that is not... Everything that has been going on with the bloodline is not exactly what Roman Reigns wanted. And Roman Reigns, of course, is the tribal chief. So Roman Reigns sees all this, and of course this leads to an original bloodline versus, of course, new bloodline storyline. But, as you know, Jey Uso is on Raw. So how are they going to recruit Jey Uso? So they'll eventually recruit Jey Uso. Maybe they're going to do some long storyline about that. And then, of course, we got Jimmy Uso coming in. That leads to the whole feud. And then we got this new bloodline. But, of course, since there's only 4 men, Rock, Guerrillas of Destiny, and JACOB Fatu, who is that 5th man for that new bloodline? Of course, there's been a lot of reports on Hikuleo. His contract is up with New Japan, so I assume Hikuleo is going to be a part of that group as well. We do not know when he's going to be making his debut, but I do assume that Hikuleo, and there's a bunch of trademarks trying to find Hikuleo a name for Hikuleo. I assume Hikuleo is definitely going to be joining this new bloodline. So you got Rock, Guerrillas of Destiny, of course, JACOB Fatu, and Hikuleo. And then you got Roman Reigns, the Usos. They'll eventually come back together. And, of course, Solo Sikoa. And who's going to be that 5th man? Of course, you got War Games coming up. And who's going to be that 5th man? I predict, and this is a far-fetch, but I do predict Sami Zayn will eventually climb his back into this original bloodline. And, of course, the original bloodline are now going to be babyfaces against the heel bloodline faction, and you're going to have War Games. That's just my fantasy booking. It's not really fantasy booking, but just off the top of my head prediction on where I see the storyline going. But, again, there's a lot of possibilities, and what I love about this storyline is that it keeps you guessing. A lot of people think that this new Bloodline is already stale, but people need to look at the bigger picture. It's going to lead to something even bigger as we head towards the summer and head into the fall, because you know for a fact we're going to be getting a Bloodline Civil War, a real Bloodline Civil War at War Games this November, and I'm genuinely excited to see what the hell is going to be happening. So those are my thoughts on this Bloodline storyline. Of course, AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling have their Forbidden Door pay-per-view coming up this weekend, and honestly, I'm not really that excited about it, considering AEW has, I don't want to say taken, they signed all of New Japan Pro Wrestling's top stars. But we're not going to be talking about Forbidden Door just yet. We're actually going to be talking about another Forbidden Door that's taking place not in AEW, but in WWE. Yes, WWE is currently working with TNA, Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. At one point, these two organizations were competitors against one another. You could say competitors, but in reality, WWE didn't really view TNA as competition even during TNA's peak. But that's besides the point. But TNA is currently working with WWE, primarily with NXT. Of course, this all started a couple weeks ago as Jordynne Grace showed up to TNA and challenged Roxanne Perez for the NXT Women's Championship at the Battleground show at the UFC Apex, which took place a couple of weeks prior. And of course, that led to the whole Forbidden Door for WWE, and a lot of people that didn't watch TNA got immediately excited and started watching TNA for 1 week and then stopped tuning in. But whatever. TNA, of course, I don't want to say has a lot of momentum right now. I mean, they had a lot of momentum in the beginning of the year, but then, of course, with Scott D'Amore getting fired from Anthem, that led to a lot of speculation and a lot of questions, arise. A lot of questions being asked after the firing of Scott D'Amore. And honestly, I thought the firing of Scott D'Amore was absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion, because if you look at the passion whenever Scott D'Amore speaks, and he did a lot. He did a whole speech when they announced the return of TNA back at Bound for Glory last fall. He did a whole speech about TNA after the Will Ospreay and Josh Alexander match on that Impact show after Hard to Kill. I mean, bro, Scott D'Amore was the perfect leader for TNA, and the fact that Anthem fired this guy simply for wanting to help the company. Apparently, Scott D'Amore wanted to buy TNA. Anthem didn't like that, and that led to a lot of problems, which led to the firing of Scott D'Amore. Of course, Scott D'Amore currently, I believe, has a non-compete clause until February of next year, so a lot of people that are hoping that he should show up in AEW, it's not going to happen, considering, of course, he is under a no-compete clause. But Scott D'Amore getting fired from TNA definitely halted their momentum a lot. Their attendance wasn't really that good, especially for the Rebellion show. I believe they returned to the Palms in Las Vegas. They weren't really doing so well. And then, of course, this whole NXT crossover that they started to do really started to pick that momentum back up for TNA, and that is great to see. Of course, when it came to this whole Forbidden Door with TNA and WWE, I gotta stop calling it a Forbidden Door because that's solely an AEW thing. But this whole crossover between NXT and TNA, of course, with Jordynne Grace, who's the current TNA Knockouts champion, the number one person that everybody was expecting to show up in NXT was none other than say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. Okay, that's my little Joe Hendry impression. But Joe Hendry, he is actually right now one of the hottest acts in TNA. And realistically, if you think about it, one of the hottest acts in professional wrestling. And he actually showed up at the NXT Battle Royal this past Tuesday, which was... The response was absolutely insane. I mean, the crowd in NXT absolutely knew who this guy was. Not only that, the views on social media, especially on Twitter, for Joe Hendry, I believe, has had the highest views since WrestleMania. So, like, after WrestleMania, Joe Hendry has had the highest views for any posts under WWE's Twitter, which is absolutely insane. Joe Hendry is not only super popular with the wrestling fan, but if you really kind of think about it, Joe Hendry's kind of popular with the casual fan as well. And that is exactly what you want. But what are my thoughts on this whole crossover between TNA and WWE? This is very, I don't want to say revolutionary, but this is very new ground for WWE, because we've always known WWE is the type of organization that always just loves living in their own bubble, especially under the Vince McMahon regime. They always lived under their own bubble. And to be fair, on one hand, I understand that because they are the industry leader. They are the industry leader, and they will forever be the industry leader. But at the same time, them working with other promotions opens a whole new door, no pun intended, for a lot of these wrestlers, especially in NXT. Keep in mind, TNA right now, they started with momentum, and then after the Scott D'Amore firing, they didn't have a lot of momentum, and now they have more momentum than ever. And there is a lot of possibilities when it comes to this whole TNA and NXT crossover. We don't even have to just focus on NXT. We can even expand even further. Of course, after the Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles match, what is AJ Styles going to be doing? Well, we do have Slammiversary coming up, I believe next month or later in a couple weeks. And Slammiversary, the tickets for Slammiversary are actually selling pretty well. And they're actually going to open up more seats, I do believe. Slammiversary is selling really well. If you really want to sell Slammiversary, because Slammiversary is TNA's anniversary show every single year, every June, why not bring in AJ Styles for a one-off appearance or one-off match in TNA? I mean, come on. It literally writes itself. But that's just pure speculation on my end. But honestly, this whole partnership between NXT and TNA has been really, really, really well. Not only that, AJ Styles is also going to be wrestling for Pro Wrestling Noah. So this new regime that has been put in place for WWE are clearly wanting to work with other promotions, and they really want that stigma to be taken away of, hey, we don't want to work with anybody, we just want to live in our own bubble. They are starting to take away that stigma and now are willing to work with other promotions, and that is great to see, especially with this TNA and NXT partnership, because it opens the door for a lot of TNA wrestlers who haven't had experience wrestling under a WWE stage to wrestle on a show like NXT. And it opens up the door for a lot of talent under the NXT umbrella that have just started training to be a pro wrestler, because keep in mind, a lot of the people that come into the PC are not only independent wrestlers. There are other talents and other wrestlers that come into the PC with no prior wrestling training. And they're just learning from scratch under the Performance Center and under NXT. So it's a good opportunity for those wrestlers to experience what it's like to wrestle outside of the WWE umbrella and wrestle under a company like TNA. So nonetheless, I mean, this is nothing but a positive at the same time. Companies working with other companies, at the end of the day, it is a beneficial thing, because it makes the industry more healthier than it already is. Because I don't care what anybody says right now, and a large portion of that has to do with AEW. The wrestling business is more healthy than it was 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago. It's way more healthy now because there's a bunch of options. Now TNA is possibly working with WWE and vice versa. A lot of people are saying this could possibly open up the door for TNA to be bought out by WWE, which I do not see being the case. I don't see that being the case whatsoever, because, I mean, to me that just makes absolutely no sense. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. A lot of extra things are going to be happening with this partnership, and I'm definitely excited to see what goes on when it comes to TNA and WWE. Now, speaking of TNA, we had a return happen at the TNA Against All Odds show. And of course, I have to talk about none other than Jeffrey Nero Hardy. Of course, Jeff Hardy, the day before Against All Odds, his contract with AEW was up. I'm going to pull up the report from Fightful. Jeff Hardy, of course, was on AEW. He was signed to AEW since 2 years ago. He showed up in AEW and didn't really have the best run, to be quite honest with you. He didn't really have the best run in AEW. And a lot of people say that AEW has fumbled a lot of wrestlers, especially a lot of wrestlers that they have signed. And I totally understand that. But at the same time, people need to really just think about this outside of the box. AEW did not really fumble Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy kind of fumbled Jeff Hardy. If you really think about this, and you really need to think about this, Jeff Hardy, of course, when he first came into AEW, everybody was expecting a one last run with the Hardy Boys, right? A one last run with the Hardy Boys. They're going to win the AEW tag team titles. There was a three-way ladder match with, of course, the Young Bucks, Jurassic Express, when Jurassic Express was still a thing, and the Hardy Boys. Now, before they booked that ladder match, a lot of people were criticizing AEW of, hey, why are you guys putting the Hardy Boys, especially Jeff, in a ladder match situation when you know the body of work that Jeff Hardy has been doing ever since arriving in AEW wasn't really that good? And people need to understand that Jeff Hardy's body of work in AEW really wasn't that good. His matches weren't really that good. He was really slow. He really couldn't keep up with the pace. The only memorable match that Jeff Hardy had, in my opinion, from my perspective, in AEW, was the match that he had with Darby Allin. That's it. That was the only memorable match that Jeff Hardy had. And, of course, that led to the DUI arrest. And, of course, we all know what happened after that. When Jeff Hardy came back last year, AEW didn't really do anything at all with the Hardy Boys. So if you really think about it, Jeff Hardy kind of fumbled the Hardy Boys reunion and everything else that happened in AEW. But we're going to look at this report from Fightful. Fightful's Sean Ross Sapp has learned that former WWE and TNA World Champion Jeff Hardy is set to become a free agent on Friday, and that was the Friday before Against All Odds. Originally, it was believed that AEW could or would add significant injury/sabbatical time to Jeff Hardy's deal, but that doesn't appear to be the case as of Wednesday. His brother Matt left the company at the start of April. Though the two sides did have talks about a renewal, Fightful has been told since then that there have been extended conversations regarding bringing Matt back in at the moment. TNA Wrestling sources told Fightful that naturally they were interested in Jeff Hardy considering his history in the company, and Matt Hardy has been working with TNA. Of course, he wrestled Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight title, and TNA sources said things went so well they asked him to work additional dates, and they can confirm that. They've also heard Jeff Hardy is planned for a TNA return, as PW Insider reported, which did lead to that return at Against All Odds. Now, apparently the Hardys are not signed to a deal. I don't think the Hardys are signed to a deal, so they're going to be making just brief appearances. But is this going to open the door for Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy to return to the WWE? I don't see them returning to the WWE, especially Jeff, considering Jeff's track record. And not only that, I think it's best for the Hardys to really have this final run that they've always wanted, not only in TNA, but also the independents. I think that is the best bet for them, in my opinion. But when it comes to AEW, Matt Hardy had more success, in my opinion, in AEW than Jeff Hardy. I think it's pretty obvious. He did more work there. And Matt Hardy lasted longer in AEW than Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy's run in AEW, in my opinion, was just a pure failure. But that's no hate against Jeff Hardy. I'm a big fan of Jeff Hardy, but when I see stuff, I'll immediately acknowledge it. Jeff Hardy's AEW run was not successful, and a large portion of that has to do with himself. And honestly, I wish Jeff all the best in TNA. Hopefully he does what he wants to do, and hopefully the Hardys get to do what they want to do outside of the WWE and really write their storybook ending and end their careers the way that they want to end them. Shifting gears now, right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Of course, it is June 24th, 2024. Before we get into all this craziness, talking about everything else that is going on in and outside of the Squared Circle, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc channel right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the Squared Circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. In our next topic, we're going to be talking about all elite wrestling. Yes, AEW, a promotion that I still love, by the way. I still love and I still enjoy their shows. But it's hard for me to not admit that there are problems with the organization. And clearly there are problems from a creative standpoint as well. Ever since Brawl Out 2 years ago, AEW has had its ups and also had its downs. And honestly, let's be honest, I have no sympathy for them whatsoever, and I'm being brutally honest right now. We're going to start off with all the AEW discussions. We're going to start by discussing AEW Forbidden Door. Forbidden Door is going to be taking place this weekend, and we're going to be running down the card for AEW Forbidden Door. Of course, Forbidden Door is going to be taking place this weekend, and honestly, I'm excited for the show. But if you were, when it comes to the excitement of the last two Forbidden Doors, I'm least excited for this Forbidden Door. And there's only one reason for that, and the main reason for that is the sheer fact that the Forbidden Door concept, especially in AEW, is kind of outdated. And that is really from a talent perspective, because if you really look at all of the signings that AEW made this year alone, AEW signed guys like Will Ospreay. They signed guys like Kazuchika Okada, two of New Japan Pro Wrestling's top guys. They signed Jay White last year. They signed Mercedes Moné, who, of course, had a stint in New Japan Pro Wrestling last year. They signed all of New Japan Pro Wrestling's top guys and top females. Not only that, they're currently partnered with CMLL as kind of a backup plan for this whole Forbidden Door thing. And honestly, I am not excited whatsoever. I think the talent in CMLL is great, but I'm not really excited for this whole AEW and CMLL crossover. That's just my opinion. But I'm still relatively excited about Forbidden Door, just not as much. And I do think the show will be absolutely phenomenal. Even though right now AEW is at a down point, their pay-per-views are still fantastic. I mean, look at Revolution. We had Revolution take place. We had an amazing match with Will Ospreay and Konosuke Takeshita. We had Dynasty take place, and we had an amazing Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay match. 2 Match of the Year caliber matches on pay-per-view with Will Ospreay. We had Double or Nothing, which was a great show as well, with the Anarchy in the Arena match. Just pure phenomenal stuff. Pay-per-views for AEW are relatively great, but when it comes to the weekly TV, there are definitely some issues which I will be talking about later on this show. I'm going to do a quick rundown of the Forbidden Door card. Of course, we're going to be talking, first off, the first match, we got MJF versus Hechicero. Of course, MJF made his recent return. Zack Sabre Jr. will be taking on Orange Cassidy, which is a match I am definitely excited about. Of course, if you guys do not remember, at Forbidden Door 2 years ago, Orange Cassidy had a Match of the Year match with, of course, the aerial assassin Will Ospreay, a match you guys should definitely check out. We have an Owen Hart Foundation Tournament first round match, as Bryan Danielson will be facing off against Shingo Takagi. The AEW Women's World Championship will be on the line, as Toni Storm will be wrestling Mina Shirakawa from Stardom. We also got the TBS Championship and the New Japan Strong Women's Championship match, as Mercedes Moné will take on Stephanie Vakir. As well as we got the AEW TNT Championship ladder match, and we only got one member to be determined, but we got so far Konosuke Takeshita taking on Mark Briscoe, taking on Jack Perry, taking on Leo Rush, taking on somebody else to be determined. We got the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match, as Jon Moxley will be defending his IWGP title against Tetsuya Naito. And in the main event, we got the AEW World Championship match, as Swerve Strickland, the mogul of professional wrestling, will be defending his title against the aerial assassin Will Ospreay. And I remember when they first announced this match, I questioned it, simply because of the fact that I feel like it's a little bit too early for you to book a Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay match. We all know eventually Swerve Strickland is going to drop that AEW World Championship, most likely to Will Ospreay. It could happen this weekend. But I think it would be a little bit more smarter if AEW had Will Ospreay win the AEW World title at Wembley Stadium. It just makes total sense. But clearly AEW is, I don't want to say cooking something, but they're clearly planning something. But we're going to have to wait and see what happens. But this ties in with my discussion on the Owen Hart Cup tournament, because AEW this past Wednesday on Dynamite announced the brackets for the Owen Hart Cup tournament. And for the women's side, it's not bad. The women's side is actually pretty interesting. So we have Willow Nightingale to be wrestling Serena Deeb. Then we also have Nyla Rose to wrestle Chris Statlander. We then have Deonna Purrazzo to wrestle Hikaru Shida, and Mariah May to wrestle Saraya. So most likely, out of all of the women to win this whole tournament, I definitely do see either Willow Nightingale or Mariah May winning this match. Mariah May makes total sense considering the storyline that she's currently in with, of course, Toni Storm, or Timeless Toni Storm. Luther. But yeah, it makes total sense. So the women's side is definitely stacked, in my opinion. Now, on the men's side, that is where I have concern, and at the same time, I'm a little bit disappointed. So on one hand, we have Claudio Castagnoli versus Pac. That match, I believe, already happened this past Wednesday on Dynamite. It's going to be a great match. We got Bryan Danielson versus Shingo Takagi, which will be happening at the Forbidden Door pay-per-view. That's going to be a great match as well. We got Rey Fenix versus Jay White, which honestly, Jay White being in this tournament makes total sense as well. In my opinion, I think Jay White is a top guy, and so far, of course, he's currently a trios champion in AEW. But realistically, after losing to MJF, he really hasn't really been doing anything. I believe he was a part of the Continental Classic as well, but this whole year he really wasn't doing a lot. He was just doing stuff with the Bang Bang Gang and winning the trios titles, and really that's kind of nothing in my opinion. But we got Rey Fenix taking on Jay White, which honestly I don't know, and I like Rey Fenix, but I don't know why Rey Fenix is in this match. And then we have Jeff Jarrett taking on a wild card. Now, this wild card is very interesting considering we do not know who that wild card is going to be. When I first saw Jeff Jarrett's name, I immediately thought disappointment. I was immediately disappointed because I was like, wait, why is Jeff Jarrett a part of this whole tournament, considering whoever wins this tournament will get a shot at the AEW World Championship? The fact that MJF, now he could very well easily be a wild card here. He could very well easily be a wild card, so I'm not counting that out. But the fact that MJF, was not a part of the initial brackets is, to me, is a crime. He's one of the hottest acts in the company, and you're not putting him in the Owen Hart Cup tournament. In my opinion, that's pure stupidity on my end. He may be the wild card, but again, what if he's not the wild card? Because there are 3 different possibilities for the wild card. 3 different possibilities, and they're very logical. On one hand, I understand them not putting Will Ospreay in this tournament. I say that because Will Ospreay will be wrestling for the AEW World Championship at Forbidden Door, and maybe we do not know, he may win the AEW World Championship at Forbidden Door. But again, I feel like that's a little bit too early. Not only that, this past Wednesday on Dynamite, AEW did tease a potential feud between MJF and Will Ospreay. The other wild card, MJF. We already talked about MJF. MJF could very well easily be the wild card, and he could go on to face either Swerve Strickland or Will Ospreay, whoever wins at Forbidden Door for the AEW World Championship. But who is the third wild card that I'm honestly predicting? The third wild card that I'm honestly predicting is Hangman Page. Now, Hangman Page, ever since Revolution, has been taking time off, and Fightful actually provided us with an update on Hangman Page. And as you guys know, Hangman Page has been feuding with Swerve Strickland since last year, and of course they were a part of that triple threat match with Swerve Strickland, Hangman Page, and Samoa Joe. So we will be talking about that, and just let me pull up the report of the update with Hangman Page. And Hangman Page honestly would make sense because Hangman Page, of course, has history with Swerve Strickland. Swerve is the world champion. What if Swerve Strickland beats Will Ospreay and goes on to All In to wrestle possibly Hangman Page? We're going to have to wait and see. I highly doubt that will be the case, but at the same time, Hangman Page could be the one to cost Swerve Strickland the belt at Forbidden Door, but that opens up a new can of worms considering Will Ospreay is the babyface. Swerve Strickland is also a babyface. It's basically a babyface versus babyface match, and in my opinion, keep in mind, I thought it was not really a good idea to turn Swerve Strickland babyface. On one hand, I do understand, considering Samoa Joe was basically a heel, so they needed to have a babyface beat Samoa Joe at Dynasty, which I totally understood. But at the same time, in my opinion, Swerve is much better off as a heel than a babyface. That's just my opinion. But basically, the Swerve and Will Ospreay match is a babyface versus babyface match. And I assume once they revisit Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland, the roles are going to be reversed. Swerve is going to be the babyface and Hangman is going to be the heel. But at the same time, if Hangman costs Swerve the title at Forbidden Door this weekend, it's going to make, if Will Ospreay wins because of that, it's going to make Will Ospreay, who is the top babyface in the company, in a way kind of look weak. That's just my opinion. That's what I see happening. But honestly, we're going to have to wait and see what happens. So there's really only 3 logical winners in the Owen Hart Cup tournament. 3 logical winners. Bryan Danielson, Will Ospreay, and MJF. And either Will Ospreay and MJF are not guaranteed to be a part of this tournament. The fact that, again, they didn't put MJF as a part of this whole thing, right from the get-go, instead of making him a wild card, why didn't you put him as a part of the actual tournament, to me is kind of stupid. Because again, he's one of the top acts, if not the most talked about act in AEW, and you're not putting him in this tournament, a tournament that grants you a world title shot at the biggest show that you possibly have at Wembley Stadium at All In. Come on now, I think that's pure stupidity. But as far as Hangman Page, Fightful put out a report on Hangman Page. Hangman Page will be returning to AEW. Hangman Page will ride again soon. The former AEW World Champion Adam Hangman Page has been out of action since early March and AEW Revolution. Page has not been injured and was out of action for personal reasons and had contractually obligated time off to tend to. Prior to that, he'd been engaged in a lengthy feud with Swerve Strickland, who has since become an AEW World Champion in his absence. After what will end up being nearly 4 months out of action, we're told, that being Fightful, that Hangman Page is poised for a return. Fightful does not have a date nailed down, but it's expected to, within the next month, likely be early July. Thus far, we have not heard creative plans for Hangman, though he was expected to continue as a heel, which he was a heel, considering, of course, everything that has transpired ever since, before he left and entering that triple threat match. We're not told if Hangman's absence is added to his current contract or if it was just worked in, but Fightful has been told that the absence wasn't a surprise and both sides knew it was coming. Fightful Select mentioned in their Q&A show that Hangman was always expected to miss this amount of time, despite Dynamite being near his home this week, that being last week, or I believe 2 weeks ago. Fightful has not heard if he's planned to be at the show, which of course he wasn't, and he hasn't returned since then. So Hangman Page is definitely going to be returning to AEW. My prediction, he will be showing up at the Forbidden Door show, and he will have a role to have in the main event between Swerve Strickland and Will Ospreay. All right, so yeah, those are my thoughts on the Owen and Forbidden Door. Now let's talk about the Dynamite ratings. I'm not really too keen on talking about ratings, but that Dynamite rating that came out last week was very, very low. And honestly, I don't want to be... look, I think all the doom and gloom talk with AEW is really ridiculous. Again, ever since WCW closed, the number one thing that has been ingrained in wrestling fans' heads is the term out of business. Let's be brutally honest with ourselves. When it comes to a wrestling fan, and wrestling fans are not intelligent, they don't even know what the hell out of business even means. That's just my opinion. But Dynamite last week scored the lowest rating in the show's history, which is not good. Not good, a no-no whatsoever. It was so bad to the point that they even lost to NXT. Yes, NXT did roughly around 700,000 viewers. AEW was roughly in the 500,000 range. You guys want to know the exact number? Dynamite drew 502,000 viewers with a .16 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. That's their new record lows. Those are new record lows for AEW's longest running show in its regular time slot on TBS, that being from 8 to 10 p.m. What are my thoughts on this rating? It is a concerning rating. Let's be honest with ourselves. It is a concerning rating. Not only that, it clearly shows that there are problems with the product and there are problems with AEW. if you are an AEW diehard fan, and look, I am an AEW diehard. I mean, watch my old videos. I am an AEW diehard through and through, and I still am an AEW diehard. I still am. But I will be brutally honest, the fan base is one of the most toxic fan bases in the world. The AEW fan base cannot take criticism for anything. They are delusional neckbeards. That is the AEW fan base. Same thing goes with the WWE fan base. I don't think one fan base is worse than the other. I think they're both equally as bad. People think, the WWE fan base doesn't do this. Oh, the AEW fan base doesn't do this. No. Both fan bases are equally as bad. I don't care what anybody says. It's pure toxicity, especially when it comes to ratings talk. It's pure toxicity. We can't deny that the AEW audience, the AEW fan base, cannot take criticism because they really can't. The moment you criticize something with AEW, they'll immediately say, oh yeah, you're just a hater, you're a piece of shit, blah, blah, blah. They will immediately spew that. And to me, that is a major issue. And that is honestly something that AEW really needs to distance itself from. But that low rating that was released last week, honestly, goes to show you right now that AEW is an ice cold product. They are ice cold. They're not at the place where they needed to be. They're not, how do I say this? They don't have momentum like they did 2 or 3 years ago. 2021, in my opinion, was AEW's peak. It was their peak. 2022 was a great year. But the cracks started to show in 2022, especially from the summer going into the fall of that year. Last year was a fine year, not a bad year. We had great shows, but of course, more drama and dispute with the whole CM Punk stuff, all that. And then this year, so each year keeps just going lower and lower and lower. This year, a lot of shit transpired. CM Punk went on Ariel Helwani's show, WrestleMania week, and talked about his experience in AEW. Says that AEW is not a real business because they're more focused on producing 5-star matches than doing actual business, which honestly, to be fair, CM Punk's not really lying. He's not really lying when he says that. But you had that. You had AEW foolishly showing the footage at All In, which completely justified everything that CM Punk said, which made AEW look so stupid in the process. It really made them look stupid. Let's be real with ourselves. It made AEW look absolutely stupid. It just did. And then the audience starts to drive away. Will AEW go away? No. They will be around for a long time. But there's no denying that the product right now is not... It's not where it needs to be right now. The product is not where it's supposed to be. AEW currently is at a down period. They just are. And those are the cold hard facts. I've always said this. It's easy for the number 2 wrestling promotion to be hot when the number 1 wrestling promotion is not as hot. But it's even more harder for the number 2 promotion to be hot when the number 1 wrestling promotion right now is doing gangbuster business. It's hard for AEW, I don't want to say to compete, but it's hard for AEW, in my opinion, to really grab the wrestling fan, considering WWE is literally grabbing all of those wrestling fans, not only in the United States, but internationally. Look at the markets that they are going to. They went to France. They went to Scotland. They're going to Berlin. WWE is expanding, and they are expanding fast. They have the same mentality that the UFC had in the early 2010s. And pardon my language, but that mentality was global fucking domination. That is WWE's mentality. And they have the right to have that mentality because they are the industry leader. Will AEW go away? No, they won't. They will be around for a long time. They will sign an extension with Warner Brothers Discovery. They will. But we can't deny that the product is not hot. It's just not. Nothing feels important. When you watch the show, there's barely any heat to anything. When they try to do something big, the crowd doesn't really react. Bro, honestly, I've never seen more Dynamites with shitty crowds more than this year. I can remember almost every week on Dynamite, they'd have an amazing crowd almost every week. And now they would have an amazing crowd maybe once every 3 weeks or every 2 weeks. To me, that's kind of depressing. Their ticket sales have been embarrassing. I mean, they're slightly picking up, but their ticket sales have been, oh my God, embarrassing, especially for those collisions. It's not really Dynamite. Well, it's really both Dynamite and Collision, but I mean, especially Collision. Collision is just really bad when it comes to ticket sales. But yeah, AEW is just not a hot product right now. Will they gain that momentum back? I don't know. Look, how long did it take for WWE to finally get momentum after all these years? It took them a while. 2019, like, bro, the dark years, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2022, 2021, and even the first half of 2022. Keep in mind, Triple H, kind of in a way, but realistically, he kind of took over the book in 2022. But like 2021, like early 2022, I mean, from 2017 to early 2022, I mean, like those were kind of like the dark years, if you really think about it, for WWE. From a creative standpoint, they were making guaranteed money, but I mean, the product didn't really reflect that. AEW's kind of going through the same thing. The product is just not as hot. It's just not hot. Will they regain that momentum? I don't know. It's going to take a while. But AEW is not a hot product. It's just not a hot product. And I hate saying that. But it's the God's honest truth, and it's the truth that the AEW fan base just does not want to hear. But I don't care, because I don't cater to just them. I cater to everybody. So that's my opinion on AEW. In our final topic, we're going to be talking about the Wyatt Sicks. Yes, the Wyatt Sicks. Finally, after months of QR codes, a bunch of terrifying QR codes when you scan those QR codes on your phone, we finally got the debut of the Wyatt Sicks this past Monday on Raw to close out the show. And honestly, it was one of the best, debuts in a while. Of course, JACOB FATU happened on Friday, but on Monday we had the Wyatt Sicks. Now, I'm going to do a quick rundown of basically what happened. The lights started going off the way basically Bray Wyatt always had the lights go off. Not only that, of course, they were doing the opening, sounds for the Wyatt theme, and of course they had Nikki Cross come out the door. The camera was panning all the way to the back, and everybody in gorilla position was dead. Yes, everybody was flat out just laying on the ground with blood on the wall. It was absolutely crazy. And then, of course, they also panned the camera as well to Chad Gable, who's doing the best heel work, but apparently the guy's dead. In kayfabe, of course. But, the camera showed Chad Gable, and then it showed Uncle Howdy. Of course, Bray Wyatt unfortunately passed away last year, God rest his soul. And we all knew, ever since they started having those QR codes after WrestleMania, we did know that the leader of this new Wyatt stable was going to be Bo Dallas, who is portraying Uncle Howdy. Now, according to Fightful, thus far, the group has not been officially named on WWE TV. That has changed. It is now called the Wyatt Sicks, and they're not putting the actual number 6. It's actually spelled S-I-C-K-S, the Wyatt Sicks. And, of course, basically thus far, the group has not been officially named on WWE TV, social media, or the website, nor have the members outside of Uncle Howdy, which we're told is by design. If you have any doubts, Bo Dallas is Uncle Howdy. Nikki Cross played the Abigail-inspired character, of course, Sister Abigail. Dexter Loomis as Mercy the Buzzard-inspired character. Joe Gacy is in the gas mask, and Eric Rowan is in the inspired character. Rowan was specifically signed for the role, and several others were kept off of WWE television for months in preparation of it. The group has already been acknowledged on WWE programming by Jey Uso, which Fightful has been told will continue. Even though the group isn't likely to interact with every program on Raw, it's expected within the company that the ramifications will be widespread across various programs, with a domino effect on stories that are happening up and down the show. Those that Fightful has spoke to said that the wide array of talent and people attacked in the story, and the characters who quote-unquote left before the show, were calculated, planned, and designed for specific reasons. Fightful Select reported this past weekend that there were going to be no supernatural elements planned for the group, which as of Tuesday morning, Fightful is still told that is going to be the case. One person in WWE noted that, quote-unquote, you can't beat ghosts with wrestling moves, which was something that Vince McMahon always had a mentality of. Yeah, you can beat guys by beating ghosts. But, of course, the current regime doesn't believe that, indicating that it would be too hard to pay that off. The Wyatt group is not listed on rundowns, but all of the hints and QR codes pointed to June 17th, and the roster was aware that the group was coming in. There are some graphic and promo shots that had made their way internally that accurately reflected the look of the group, but were kept pretty close to the vest. As the main event happened, the stage was quickly set up to show the reveal of Nikki Cross's character, which was impossible to hide from the audience. WWE was happy with the camera shot and reveal that went backstage, then followed Uncle Howdy back to the entranceway. WWE sources that Fightful spoke to were also over the moon about the crowd reaction from the Corpus Christi crowd in general, which had long held a reputation as a dead crowd. As far as production, buzz, and the feedback that was received from the segment, Fightful has been told that WWE was very happy with how all of that worked out. So yeah, that was the Fightful report of the Wyatt Sicks. Overall, I mean, I thought the debut last night was absolutely fantastic. This is definitely up to par with the Bray Wyatt return at Extreme Rules 2 years ago. If you guys do not remember that, it was absolutely bonkers, that whole return. But what is going to be the direction when it comes to the Wyatt Sicks? Honestly, you know, I'd rather have WWE take this whole storyline slow. I don't want them to rush anything. But at the same time, I don't want them to take their time too much. Like, take your time, but don't drag it out like you did the Bray Wyatt stuff, because the Bray Wyatt stuff, they definitely dragged it out a little bit too much. And unfortunately, we lost Bray Wyatt around, you know, the summer of last year, which sucked. But honestly, I do think WWE has big plans for this whole group. There's not going to be any supernatural elements. They're going to be more grounded, which I absolutely love. And honestly, man, you know, I'm very intrigued on what could possibly go on. I mean, Raw is going to be happening tonight. I'm definitely interested in what's going to be happening on Raw as well. Are we going to be getting possible more QR codes? I doubt it, but if they still do, I'm still very excited to see what goes on. But nonetheless, this was a great moment that happened last week on Raw, and hopefully there's a lot of success when it comes to this new Wyatt Sicks stable. But yeah, that concludes the WrestleHavoc podcast from June 24th, 2024. We definitely talked about a lot of topics right here on the show. Of course, I haven't been on YouTube in a couple of months. Of course, I've been really busy with a lot of stuff. School, work, a lot of stuff. I've been busy, stress. It was crazy. I couldn't keep up with all the videos. But when it comes to this podcast, we will be getting one podcast every single week right here on the WrestleHavoc channel. Of course, the WrestleHavoc Podcast is the podcast where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. It's going to be taking place every Sunday, so be on the lookout for more episodes of this podcast. But that concludes the WrestleHavoc podcast from June 24th, 2024. Please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications. I mean, look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc channel in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all later. Peace.